What's up, cinephiles? My name is TJ and welcome to Cinemateq. It's time to wrap up the weekly film news just for you. And you can be assured that we are not going to be talking about the news that came out of D23 at all. I don't really see the point in it. It's been picked apart to death already. And in my mind, the only thing that was really interesting was the fact that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross are going to be collaborating on the score for the new Pixar film Soul. That sounds real cool, and I will be looking forward to that. But we're done with it. We're done with D23. We're moving on because there's real film news to get to. Specifically, the Telluride Film Festival has announced its lineup. Telluride is an interesting film festival. It's part of the big three that make up the late August, early September film festivals that includes Venice, which has already started, and TIFF, which starts next week. Now, Telluride, they don't announce their films before you actually get to the festival. And it was just today, the Thursday that we tape on, that they announced their lineup. They start showing films tomorrow on the 30th. So if you bought tickets for Telluride, you show up and you're like, man, I hope these are gonna be good films. Speaking of good films, let's talk about some of the highlights, starting with The Assistant by Kitty Green. This film kind of came out of left field, and Harvey Weinstein is probably wishing that it actually wasn't coming out, as it is about an assistant to a New York-based media mogul who witnesses and is subjected to sexual abuse. The film is inspired by the Harvey Weinstein story, and I hope he is just super uncomfortable the entire weekend, as both this film premiere at Telluride, and there's a documentary coming out on Hulu about him. I believe it's called Untouchable. So fuck you, Harvey Weinstein. You deserve this. Other films of note at the Telluride Film Festival include Family Romance, LLC by Werner Herzog, Judy by Rupert Gold, Motherless Brooklyn by Edward Norton, and First Cow by Kelly Reichardt. And I gotta say, congratulations to A24 for picking up what is probably gonna be another good one. As you guys know, we run an A24 podcast on this channel. The first episode will be debuting on Monday, so make sure to come back to the channel and check that out when it goes live. It also helps if you click those bell notifications so you know exactly when it comes out, because you wanna see it right when it comes out. You don't wanna be late. You don't wanna be late for this. This is important. Getting back to Telluride, we now have the full lineups for Venice, Telluride, and TIFF. And it does beg the question, are there any films that made it into all three festivals? And the answer is, yeah, 2 of them. Now at first, I was surprised by this low number because TIFF lets in so many films. Something around 250 feature films are going to be at the festival this year. However, when you look at Telluride and Venice, they each let in less than 30 each. So the fact that there's very little crossover is maybe to be expected. The 2 films that show up at all 3 festivals are Marriage Story by Noah Baumbach, and we're going to be talking about Marriage Story a little bit later in the episode as well, and Verdict by Raymond Rabari Gutierrez. And I have to say, well done to Gutierrez and Verdict for getting into all 3 festivals. This film was not on my radar at all until I realized it was in TIFF, Venice, and Telluride. So now it's one that I think I'm going to try to check out at TIFF if I can. Now, the longtime viewers amongst you might remember that many weeks ago, we tried to predict a certain number of films that were going to be in Telluride. I tried to guess 10 of the films, and those 10 films included Motherless Brooklyn, Uncut Gems, The Two Popes, The Report, Judy, Ford vs. Ferrari, Marriage Story, Pain and Glory, Parasite, and Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And how many do you think got in, Rob?
Can you name them again?
No.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 7.
Nope, 10 out of 10, baby. Perfect score. So obviously next year, we're gonna have to turn this into more of a game, see if we can beat it, see if we can get 30 for 30, or 21 for 21, however many they put in there, and we can call ourselves true Telluride experts. Wouldn't that be fun? Moving on to more film festival news. The Venice Film Festival is in full swing. At time of recording, it's been going on for about 2 days, so by the time you watch this, it will have been going on for about 3 or 4, or maybe it's over and you just got to this video late. Shame on you. And so now we're starting to get reviews and first impressions from films that were having their world premiere at Venice. So what do we know about the films that have played already? Let's just do a quick overview of some of the reviews to see what we can expect as these films make their way to larger audiences, starting with The Truth by Hirokazu Koreeda. Owen Gleiberman over at Variety said that the film was first shot to last, a film of high wit and confidence and verve, an astonishingly fluid and accomplished act of boundary leaping, adding that Catherine Deneuve is magnificent. However, Marta Balaga over at Cine Europe said that the dialogue was kind of clunky, which I think some people were concerned about considering that this is Corrieta's first English language film, and he shot it in France with a French crew, so there was a high chance that there might be something lost in translation. Now let's look at the early reviews for Marriage Story. Lieberman, again from Variety, hoisted high praise on the film, stating, and I quote, "It is so accomplished, it elevates the writer-director of Squid and the Whale," being Noah Baumbach, if you haven't been following along, "to a whole new level." Eric Cohn over at IndieWire described the film as having devastating performances that rank as their very best, and he was speaking about Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson there. This sounds like all kinds of good news for Marriage Story, and depending on how some of the other chips fall for other films leading into awards season, we might be looking at Marriage Story being a very strong contender. Moving on to some industry news, particularly when it comes to streaming. We have got what could perhaps be called a deal with the devil. The devil, of course, being Disney in this instance. They have decided that they are going to launch a kind of ridiculous Founders Circle kind of promotion for Disney+. If you buy 2 years up front, you'll get your third year for free. That's right, for the low price of like $140 in the US, you can get Disney+ for 3 years. I think this might actually be a pretty savvy move on Disney's part. Something that I know I've been doing recently is not perpetually subscribing to services like Netflix or Shudder, but subscribing to them when something I want to see actually goes on, and then using the rest of the month to kind of catch up on the backlog of stuff that I've been meaning to see but hadn't gotten around to yet because I didn't have the service. Most recently, I got Netflix back for a month so I could watch the second season of Mindhunter and then use that as an excuse to catch up on Brooklyn Nine-Nine and watch some of the Kung Fu films that they have on there. It was definitely worth the $12 or $13 that I had to pay for it, and I didn't get this anxiety where I was just sending money to Netflix and not really getting anything out of the service. So by Disney hooking you in for 3 years right from the beginning avoids this. And by the time that 3 years comes up, who knows how much Disney Plus is going to cost and how much more must-see content they will have created for it. Moves like this worry me, but from a business perspective, I think this is actually pretty smart. But I can't congratulate Disney too much because they have shown to be evil in another way. Okay, we're gonna get to the big evil thing in a second, but Rob just told me about a smaller evil thing that they're doing. Apparently, Disney is going to be releasing their series on Disney Plus week by week, so people won't be able to binge watch them, which, once again, will prevent people like me from signing into the service for a month, watching everything I want to watch, and then leaving.
What? It's like television or something.
The future of streaming is television. You heard it here first. Okay, now going to the actual evil thing that Disney is doing, and that is putting all of the films from the Fox purchase in the Disney Vault. They are extending their Vault policy to all films that came over as part of the Fox deal. For those of you who don't know, the Disney Vault essentially states that any film made by Disney cannot be screened in theaters 1 year after its release. There obviously have been some exceptions to this in the past. Those of you who are really into the Marvel films will know that every time a big Marvel film comes out, there is typically a giant marathon that precedes the premiere of that new big film. But aside from those exceptions, it's been exceedingly difficult, near impossible, to see Disney films in theaters after that 1 year initial window has passed. Now, as far as we can tell, Matthew Zoller Seitz was the first person to sound the alarm on this. On July 24th, he tweeted, and I quote, "I just heard from a film booker that Disney is no longer permitting repertory bookings of 20th Century Fox titles in theaters that show current releases. Rep houses and nonprofits are still okay." Now, this is a big deal for a number of reasons. Depending on the city you're in, there could be one or many repertory or second-run theaters that have traditionally relied on revenue from showing older films to audiences. Something that is quite typical in most cities is that a theater will show Die Hard right around Christmas, or some cities have a monthly screening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. These are now all off of the table, according to some news sources that have come out from the Canadian press. The CBC and the Toronto Star are both reporting, based on things that they've heard from theater owners, that they are being completely locked out of the Fox back catalog. And some of these theaters have been showing these films for years. The Mayfair Theater in Ottawa, which both Rob and I love. Rob, you like the Mayfair, right?
I actually haven't been.
You've never been to the Mayfair?
No.
Ah, it's so good. They've been doing a monthly screening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show for years, and it's excellent. I would advise everyone to go to it if it still existed. However, it doesn't from the sounds of it. Now, the Mayfair, as an example, gets into these issues because they also run current releases. They are either a first run or a second run theater, I'm not sure which, but they do show current releases, as well as showing these older films in order to bring different audiences into the theater. That instance, unfortunately, is pretty cut and dry. However, if you look at a local Toronto theater called The Review, they are actually a non-profit theater. And based on the tweet that we just read, non-profits are supposed to be exempted from this, except The Review also shows second-run films. So the non-profit status of The Review doesn't matter because they're a second-run theater. So the only theaters that are going to be allowed to show this stuff are repertory cinemas, period. But I can also see there being some complications to this. If you look at another Toronto theater, the Royal, they have essentially switched to an entirely repertory-based program schedule. They don't show new films anymore. They don't really show second-run films anymore. They haven't for a few months, maybe even longer. However, you can still rent out the theater and show your film there, which could be construed as a current release. They also have film festivals come into the theater. The European Union Film Festival, as an example. They take up space in the Royal for like a week, 2 weeks usually, and they show current new films. So does doing that mean that they no longer have access to the Fox catalog? We really don't know for sure, and I can kind of see Disney pulling this kind of a move in order to make their films more valuable, to increase whatever they're getting out of the Fox deal. I don't know. It just seems like a bad way to get on the bad side of a lot of people who love film. Okay, that was a bit of a rant on Disney, and I apologize for that. So maybe we should just move on, cease talking about the House of Mouse for now, and move on to the other streaming titans, the OG streaming titan, Netflix, and talk about the movies they're putting into theaters, because of course that's why we would talk about a streaming service. Last week, we talked about how Netflix was having a lot of trouble getting The Irishman into theaters, specifically the big chains in both the United States and Canada, AMC, Cineplex, respectively. Now, Netflix has announced the theater dates for The Irishman, and it looks like none of them are with AMC or Cineplex, so that deal just wasn't reached. Netflix has pegged The Irishman as being a big film for them going into awards season, and because of that, the film needs to open up in both New York and LA and have theatrical runs there. So, on November 1st, that's exactly what's going to happen. And then, on November 8th, the film is going to release out slowly to more territories, leading up to November 27th, when the film will be released to everyone on Netflix. Last week, we also discussed that the negotiations that Netflix was having regarding The Irishman with AMC and Cineplex could also affect the release of their other films in theaters. And it looks like that has been true, because none of their other films that are releasing for awards season are coming to those chains either. That includes Marriage Story, which will be getting a limited release on November 6th and released to streaming on December 6th. The Laundromat, which will be released to theaters on September 27th in a limited run and will hit streaming on October 18th. And Dolomite Is My Name, which will be released to theaters in a limited run on October 4th and then hitting streaming on October 25th. So it looks like Netflix and the big theater chains just couldn't come to a consensus. I know this affects a lot of people, and it means that people just won't be able to see these films in theaters, or they'll have a less of a chance to do so. So I want to throw this question out to the audience. Are you kind of upset that you might not be able to see these films on the big screen because Netflix and AMC and Cineplex can't come to an agreement on how best to show the films? Let us know in the comments below. And one other quick piece to say about The Irishman before we move on to the trailers. IndieWire got hold of the running time for The Irishman and published it so we could all collectively stare at it and wonder, how the hell am I going to watch this whole thing? The Irishman will be 210 minutes long, or 3.5 hours for those of you who can't do quick division. That's a long time to be staring at de-aged characters, so maybe that's why the budget for The Irishman was so high. It wasn't the quality of the de-aging that they had to do, but the amount that they had to do. In any case, I know I'm still gonna see it because it's going to be an awards film and I have to see all of the films that are competing for Oscars. But man, 3.5 hours is a long time to spend in theater. I just saw the final cut of Apocalypse Now, which is like just a little over 3 hours, and that was a bit much. And Apocalypse Now is one of the best films ever made. So, I don't know. Martin Scorsese, you've got a lot of work to do. You've already done it. You've already done all the work. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here. Let's move on to the trailers. The first trailer up that I want to talk about is The Laundromat, and this one comes straight from Netflix. The Laundromat features Meryl Streep, Antonio Banderas, Gary Oldman, among others. It's a Steven Soderbergh film, so I'm 100% on board already, even though, and I will get hate for this, I am not a fan of late-stage career Gary Oldman. Moving on, we also got the trailer for Two Popes by Fernando Meirelles. And he has been on my list of just director that I watch everything by since I saw City of God when I was in high school. But going back to the Two Popes, it features Sir Anthony Hopkins playing Pope Benedict, you know, the one who was a Hitler Youth when he was a kid, and Jonathan Pryce playing Pope Francis, the new Pope, the one that everyone seems to like, but the one who still isn't really doing much about children being sexually abused by Catholic priests. I'm actually curious as to how much the film is going to touch on that particular subject, because you kind of can't look at the time period that they're going for without addressing that very specific thing happening within the Catholic Church. But they don't show any mention of it in the trailer, so I wonder what's going on there. I wonder what they're gonna end up doing. In any case, based on the pedigree of everyone involved, it's one that I'm gonna see. I think it's one that a lot of people are gonna see. And who knows, maybe we'll get late career Oscars for both Anthony Hopkins and Jonathan Pryce, depending on the quality of their performance, or how close they are to death. It's hard to tell with the Oscars how much they care about these things from year to year. The third film I wanna talk about, and to bring things back from talking about movies being produced by multi-billion-dollar corporations, is Girl on the Third Floor by Travis Stevens. This is a horror film. It has played at all of these festivals. So when this trailer started rolling, my first immediate thought was, hey, is that CM Punk? And it actually is CM Punk. So I was like, hey, I'm a wrestling fan. And there's a wrestler in this movie that's not produced by WWE Films, so there's a chance it'll actually be good. Oh my God, what a wonderful world that we live in. Now, of course, there's always a chance that CM Punk is a bad actor, but the rest of the film looks like it could carry the weight. The film looks like it has a ton of gore in it, as evidenced by this particular shot. And the whole thing appears to be a bit of a twist on the haunted house style of horror film. I'm always up for a slightly new take on a subgenre that I'm not that into, to see if the director can do something different with it. And it looks like maybe Travis Stevens has succeeded in doing that. We'll just have to wait and see until the film actually comes out. And that, cinephiles, is the end of your weekly news wrap-up. We're done. We're done with this. So, before you click away, before you go away, please make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell notification button. And throw a comment down below. Let us know what you think about the stories we talked about. What do you think about the Telluride Film Festival lineup? Have you heard any reviews of films that are at Venice that have piqued your interest or are making you stay away from a particular film? Do you care about Disney's business practices? And are you one of these people who's going to be crushed by not being able to see Die Hard in theaters every Christmas? Let us know in the comments. Give the video a like. I think we earned it in this one. No dislikes this time. Whoever did that last one, I thought I told you to be cool, man. Be cool. And that's it. We're done. We're out of here. Rob, let's go. You're still sitting.
I'm watching Disney Plus trailers on my phone.
You bastard.